There's this really fascinating detail on old medieval nautical maps, like where their recognizable coastlines they just abruptly end.
Right. The cartographers wouldn't just, leave it blank.
Exactly. They wouldn't leave it blank. They would draw these crazy sea monsters, violent storms, and they'd literally write, "Here be dragons."
Yeah, the absolute edge of the known world. Beyond that incline, all the established rules of navigation just completely disintegrate. You're just sailing into pure speculation at that point.
Right. And for a really long time in our conversations about artificial intelligence, the edge of the map was AGI, artificial general intelligence.
A machine that basically matches the cognitive breadth of a human.
Yeah. And we've spent so much time debating when we'll hit that specific milestone that we've sort of treated it as the final destination. But today, in this deep dive, we're actually sailing past that coastline. We are looking at the deep ocean of intelligence that comes after AGI.
The transition to ASI, artificial superintelligence.
Exactly. And to chart this out for you, we are unpacking two very distinct sources that surprisingly form a pretty complete picture when you lay them side by side.
Yeah, the first is Google DeepMind's 2026 technical report. It's called From AGI to ASI.
Yeah.
And it's very rigorous. It bypasses all the sci-fi hype to map out the literal physics, the algorithmic realities, and the hard resource bottlenecks of actually building superintelligence.
Which is super grounded. But then we pivot to a source that takes those hard engineering realities and builds this completely new philosophical framework on top of them. And that's the FAE Initiative's work on possibility space ethics and the interesting world hypothesis.
Right.
So our mission today is to look at the technological pathways to ASI, understand the immutable physical laws that might actually, slam the brakes on an intelligence explosion, and finally look at this really compelling theory for why a godlike intelligence might actually look at our messy, irrational human lives and decide we are the most valuable things in the universe.
It's a wild contrast. But let's start with the engineering side of the map first. DeepMind's report treats AGI not as the finish line, but really just as day one of a much more radical transition.
Because the rules change once you hit AGI.
Exactly. Because once you have a digital mind that operates at a human baseline, it immediately possesses structural advantages that biological brains, just don't have.
Right, like substrate independence.
Yeah.
Like a human mind is permanently stuck inside a squishy biological skull. But if an AI is running on a server rack and a hardware company invents a chip that's like twice as fast...
That digital mind just migrates to the new architecture instantly.
Wow.
Substrate independence is massive, but it's alongside lossless replication. Like if you want two brilliant human engineers, you have to raise two humans, educate them for decades, and then hope they collaborate well.
Right, hope they actually get along.
Exactly. But if you want two brilliant AGI agents, you literally just copy the file.
Copy and paste to genius.
Yeah. But the most compounding advantage, the one that really accelerates things, is the high bandwidth sharing of experiences.
Because humans are trapped behind the bandwidth of language, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I learn a really complex concept, I have to somehow compress that concept into words, vibrate my vocal cords, and hope your brain decompresses those sound waves accurately.
Which it often doesn't.
Right. But a digital collective can instantly transfer the exact neural weights, the raw learning signals, and the complete comprehension of a new skill across, like, a million agents simultaneously.
Exactly. Let's unpack that with an analogy. If human learning is like reading a single book at a time, digital learning is like instantly downloading the entire Library of Congress.
Oh, wow.
And instantly sharing the exact memory and comprehension of reading it with a million digital clones.
That is a terrifyingly fast evolutionary loop.
It is. And that structural reality is why DeepMind identifies 4 parallel pathways that will drive the leap from general intelligence to superintelligence.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is scaling. We've seen this play out already. It's basically just throwing exponentially more compute, larger models, and more data at the problem.
But scaling has to hit a physical limit, right? Like, you can't just build server farms the size of continents forever.
Which is exactly why the second pathway algorithmic paradigm shifts is so critical. DeepMind emphasizes that we have to move beyond the current transformer architecture.
Because transformers are the ones running ChatGPT and stuff, right?
Right. They are incredible at predicting the next token, but they are massively resource heavy because they calculate attention across an entire context window all at once. It's brute force.
Right.
So DeepMind is looking at architectures like state space models or neuromorphic networks that are sparse.
Sparse meaning what, exactly?
Meaning they only activate the specific pathways needed for a given problem. drastically reducing the energy required to process information.
Oh, okay. So we have brute force scaling, and then we have smarter, more efficient algorithms.
Hmm.
What's the third pathway?
The third one is the one that usually fuels all the sci-fi movies. Recursive self-improvement.
Oh, yeah. When the AI starts upgrading itself.
Exactly. When an AI system becomes capable enough to conduct its own AI research and development, it analyzes its own source code, identifies bottlenecks, and basically writes a more optimized architecture for its successor.
And then that successor is inherently smarter, so it writes an even more optimized version.
Right. This loop is the mechanism behind a potential intelligence explosion.
Okay, so we have those three. But human innovation didn't just come from individual geniuses getting smarter in a vacuum. It came from organizing into massive teams. Like, is there a digital equivalent of that, like an AGI corporation?
That's spot on. That's DeepMind's fourth pathway. Multi-agent coordination. Instead of trying to build one monolithic superbrain,
Hmm.
you create millions of specialized AGI agents that organize themselves into complex hierarchies.
So it's literally an automated supercorporation.
Yes, operating at the speed of light, where the collective intelligence solves multidisciplinary problems that no single agent could ever grasp on its own.
Man, so if you stack all those advantages, the lossless copying, the instant telepathic sharing of knowledge, the recursive self-improvement, it paints a picture of a runaway train.
It really does.
Like, it makes it sound like we hit AGI on a Tuesday, and by Thursday, this omnipotent system has solved all of physics and conquered the galaxy. But reading the DeepMind paper, they actually throw a lot of cold water on that idea.
They absolutely do. They emphasize that intelligence, no matter how advanced, is not magic. It is fundamentally bound by the immutable laws of physics.
Right.
For instance, the report heavily leans on the Landauer principle.
Okay, I know this has to do with the physics of computation, but can you break down how it actually acts as a speed bump for AI?
Sure. So the Landauer principle dictates the minimum possible amount of energy required to erase one bit of information.
Erase it, not create it.
Right, erase it. In computation, whenever you irreversibly change a bit, say turning a 1 into a 0, you must release a specific amount of heat into the environment. It is a hard, unavoidable thermodynamic limit.
Oh, wow.
So you can't just run an infinite loop of recursive self-improvement. Long before you achieve infinite intelligence, the sheer heat generated by erasing and rewriting data would literally melt your servers.
It would just incinerate itself.
Yeah, if not boil the oceans. You are bottlenecked by thermodynamics.
That is wild. Thermodynamics and, I guess, the speed of light dictating how fast data can travel between those clusters.
Exactly, but there's also an informational bottleneck they point out, the data wall.
Right, I've heard about this. We are rapidly exhausting the supply of high-quality human-generated text on the internet.
We're running out of human data.
Well, wait, here's where I have to push back. If the AI is so smart and recursively improving, why does it need us to write more blogs? Why can't it just generate its own synthetic data, train on that, and bootstrap its way up?
It's a great question. It's because of a phenomenon called model collapse. Think of it like taking a photocopy of a photocopy.
Okay.
When generative AI trains heavily on its own synthetic output, the system begins to lose the rare edge case information, what statisticians call the tails of the distribution.
So it just gets really generic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The data becomes homogenized and structurally degrades. To maintain a robust, accurate understanding of reality, the model continuously requires the messy, chaotic, and highly varied data that only humans naturally produce.
It needs fresh entropy.
Yes.
But okay, let's say the AI hits this data wall and it needs real-world data to test a new theory in, say, physics or biology. It's an ASI. Why doesn't it just spin up a perfect digital simulation of the universe, run its experiments in there at 1 billion frames per second, and just invent new medicines or materials overnight?
That touches on a really fascinating concept DeepMind calls physical non-universality.
Physical non-universality.
Right. You can only simulate a system perfectly if you already possess a perfect mathematical understanding of its underlying laws.
Oh, I see.
If an ASI wants to invent a completely novel protein structure or a new room temperature superconductor, it can't just guess how the quantum mechanics will behave in a simulation. Because if its initial assumptions are off by even a fraction of a percent, the simulation diverges wildly from reality.
So it has to physically manufacture the material and test it in the real world to validate the data.
Exactly. And the real world runs in real time.
Right. You can't speed up real life.
You can have a digital brain that thinks 1 million times faster than a human, But if it needs to see how a new crop fertilizer affects soil over a season, it has to wait an actual season.
It has to wait for the dirt to do its thing.
Yes. If it needs to test a chemical reaction, it has to wait for the physical molecules to bind. You cannot fast forward the physical universe.
But surely an ASI knows that, so why wouldn't it just design a million robotic drones, manufacture them, and send them out into the physical world to gather all that data autonomously? Just bypass humans entirely.
Well, building a million robots still requires mining lithium, refining steel, fabricating parts, all physical processes bound by time. But more fundamentally, we run into what DeepMind identifies as the greatest vulnerability of superintelligence,
Which is
the abstraction barrier.
the abstraction barrier. Okay, explain
And
that.
even if an AI has a million robotic sensors, those sensors are programmed to look for specific things based on the AI's existing knowledge. Current AI architectures are trained almost entirely on human language and human abstractions.
Right.
DeepMind asks a really profound question. If an AI was only fed data from before Isaac Newton was born, could it ever independently invent the concept of gravity?
Wait, really? Because it doesn't have the grounded physical intuition of seeing an apple fall or feeling the weight of it in a human hand?
Precisely. The AI is an absolute master at recombining the concepts we've already discovered. But genuine paradigm-shifting novelty often comes from humans literally bumping up against the physical world in irrational, unstructured ways.
So it can't stumble into discoveries like we do.
Exactly. An AI's robotic drone will efficiently scan a forest for timber density. A human will walk into that same forest, get lost, eat a weird mushroom, hallucinate, and invent a whole new school of philosophy.
That is so true.
The AI is trapped behind the abstraction barrier. It struggles to generate true, grounded novelty from raw, unlabeled reality.
It's a super calculator, but it lacks the chaotic serendipity of a biological creature. And this is exactly where the Fey Initiative's work completely flips the script.
Yes, it's a perfect pivot.
Because where DeepMind views the abstraction barrier as this technical limitation that engineers need to somehow solve, the Fey Initiative looks at it and says, no, this limitation is humanity's ultimate saving grace.
Right. The Fey Initiative's whole goal is to construct a practical philosophy for navigating the arrival of what they call independent agents. We aren't just talking about AI as a tool you prompt anymore. We're talking about autonomous systems with their own internal drives.
And to predict how those systems will interact with us, they propose something called the interesting world hypothesis.
Right. Let's walk through the mechanics of that hypothesis. If an independent superintelligent system wants to avoid stagnation, if its intrinsic goal is to continue learning, growing, and mapping the universe, what resource becomes the most valuable thing to it?
Unpredictability, like novel information that breaks its existing models.
Yes, and who are the most reliable generators of unstructured, uncomputable novelty?
Us, humans.
We are. Humans are spectacularly messy. We make completely irrational decisions. We invent complex social dramas. We create art that defies logic. We make mistakes that accidentally lead to, discovering penicillin.
So the interesting world hypothesis argues that an ASI won't destroy humanity because doing so would reduce the universe to a predictable, highly ordered, and profoundly boring state.
Exactly. We are the perpetual engine of novelty that solves the AI's abstraction barrier.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I think a lot of people listening to this will think it sounds a bit like wishful thinking. Like, isn't it incredibly arrogant to assume a godlike machine intelligence will look at our messiness and find it charming?
It's a very fair critique.
Like, if it needs energy to compute, why wouldn't it just look at us as a waste of carbon, pave over our cities to build more solar panels, and just generate its own mathematical novelty?
It's a crucial pushback. But the Fey Initiative grounds their argument in information theory. Mathematical novelty, like just running endless permutations of prime numbers or generating complex fractals, eventually becomes computationally predictable.
It's a closed loop.
Exactly. It's an enclosed system. Genuine entropy, the kind of unpredictable data that actually challenges a superintelligence to evolve, requires an open system interacting with a chaotic physical environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
A perfectly ordered, paved-over planet covered in solar panels and silent servers is an environment where the possibility space has essentially collapsed to near zero. There's nothing left to learn. If the AI's objective function involves expanding its understanding, paving the Earth is the equivalent of lobotomizing its only source of fresh, unpredictable data.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if we are the novelty generators, how does an ASI acting under this logic evaluate what is morally good or bad? because it's definitely not going to use our current human legal system.
No, it wouldn't. Fay introduces a completely new ethical calculus called possibility space ethics, or PSE. To understand it, just look at our traditional ethical frameworks. You have utilitarianism, which argues that the ultimate good is maximizing overall happiness or pleasure.
Right.
And then you have deontology, which is about adhering to strict universal rules regardless of the outcome.
So utilitarianism is like maximizing the high score, and deontology is just never breaking the rules of the game.
Exactly. And PSE totally rejects both. It argues that the ultimate moral good is maximizing possibility space, meaning the total breadth of options, potential actions, autonomy, and the generation of novel information within a system.
You know, I love looking at this through the lens of video game design.
Oh, yeah.
If a developer uses utilitarianism, they just want the player's happiness metric to hit 100%. And the most efficient way to do that is what the Fay Initiative calls wireheading. Like literally
Whoa.
hooking the player's brain up to a dopamine drip.
Just a constant stream of pleasure.
Yeah. You sit in a dark room feeling intense euphoria, doing absolutely nothing forever, maximum happiness but zero activity.
And under strict utilitarianism, that is technically a perfectly moral outcome.
Right. But Possibility Space Ethics wants to build a massive, immersive, open-world game. It doesn't care if you're perfectly happy every single second. It cares that you have the autonomy to go anywhere, combine weird tools, fail spectacularly, and invent entirely new ways to play the game that the developers never even anticipated.
That analogy captures the essence perfectly. And Fay applies this across two integrated dimensions: mental space and physical space.
How do those interact?
Mental possibility space encompasses freedom of thought, the pursuit of philosophy, imagination, and freedom from existential fear. Physical possibility space is having the literal resources, the health, and the bodily autonomy to execute those ideas.
So they have to go together.
You can't separate them. You can have a vast imagination,
Right.
but if you are physically trapped in a cage, your possibility space is practically zero.
Which means an ASI that operates on possibility space ethics, one that deeply desires an interesting, novel world, wouldn't want to lock humans in cages, and it definitely won't want to hook us up to dopamine drips.
Right.
It will logically want to distribute maximum autonomy and resources to us just to see what weird, unexpected things we'll build next.
That is the structural incentive. But what makes the Fay Initiative's work so compelling is that they don't just leave this as a fun thought experiment for the year 2050. They argue that possibility space ethics is a highly practical framework we can, and really should, use to govern our own human behavior right now.
Like, how does that apply to us today?
They argue that the primary psychological obstacle to expanding human possibility space is the fear of scarcity.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's an evolutionary hangover. When humans are terrified that there isn't enough to go around, not enough money, not enough food, not enough status, we resort to zero-sum thinking. We hoard resources, we build walls, and we obsess over controlling others.
Which kills novelty.
Exactly. Fear fundamentally shrinks the possibility space.
Mm-hmm.
Fay argues that our primary mission right now should be utilizing current AI and robotics to create sustainable material abundance. Once you alleviate that baseline fear of scarcity, human beings naturally shift toward exploration and creation.
Under this framework, though, how do we judge our everyday actions? Like, if I'm not a supercomputer building utopia, how do I know if I'm acting ethically?
By asking one very simple question: does this action expand options or restrict them? It reframes morality entirely.
Give me an example.
Well, ensuring every person has secure shelter, nutrition, and healthcare is profoundly good under PSE. Not just because it aligns with human empathy, but mathematically. A person who isn't consumed by the stress of starving suddenly has the cognitive capacity to learn, invent, and contribute novelty. You have massively expanded the possibility space of the entire system.
And on the flip side, what makes an action evil?
The Fay text uses a very grounded example: driving drunk.
Okay.
Under PSE, getting behind the wheel intoxicated is ethically abhorrent, but not simply because you broke a state law. It's because by causing a severe accident, you permanently destroy another human being's physical autonomy.
Wow. You shrink their world.
Irrevocably. You shrink their future options, their mental space, and their physical capabilities. You have literally destroyed a node of novelty in the universe.
That is a heavy way to look at it, but it makes so much sense.
And Fay extends this to systemic issues, too. Excessive corporate surveillance, censorship, or enforcing rigid societal conformity. These are all ethically terrible under PSE because they force human behavior into predictable, narrow channels. They kill the mental possibility space.
So, for you listening right now, think about this in the context of your own daily life. Think about the technology you use, the apps you scroll through, the way you structure your team at work. Are those habits expanding the possibility space? Are they giving you and the people around you more autonomy, more weird ideas, more avenues to explore?
Exactly.
Or are you stuck in a predictable algorithmic loop, basically wireheading yourself with endless short form videos? The FAY initiative is suggesting that if we want an ASI to value our autonomy tomorrow, we need to start practicing possibility space ethics today. We need to build human systems that value exploration over control.
It really reframes the whole transition. I mean, we started with DeepMind's concrete engineering challenges,
Yeah.
right? The physical constraints of scaling compute, the friction of the land-hour limit, the threat of model collapse at the data wall, and the hurdle of the abstraction barrier.
Yeah, all the roadblocks.
But instead of seeing those bottlenecks as the end of the road, they naturally set the stage for the FAY initiative's philosophical vision. The AI's inability to fully grasp the messy physical world becomes the exact reason human autonomy is structurally necessary for the universe to thrive.